Thank you very much, Olivier. As you can expect, we are not yet fully prepared.
What?
Well, we have...
Speak for yourself, Jerome.
Oh, that's right, Antje. You have everything in mind, so please handle the microphone. No, we still have a few slides to prepare to frame the things, I would say. But just as an introduction, I personally feel, I'm sure Antje shared that, very happy about this summit. We were afraid of, having a lack of representativity, missing topics, having people working within disciplines and so on. And I think it has been really great. We got a lot of positive feedbacks from the sessions, helping us to improve actually this draft statement we have already produced. And so that's actually Antje over the last few minutes worked on the new version of the statement that should be the final one, hopefully, that we will give tonight to be annexed to the declaration of the heads of state tomorrow. So, Antje, do you want to summarize in a way what we would like to convey through this declaration?
Yeah, I would first also add to the thank you and good surprise that you've mentioned. Because in the scientific breakout session, a lot of you came back afterwards. I mean, I heard only the one I was in and moderating, but there was so many good feedback that if we come together and if we listen to science, there's always the unexpected understanding of what we care for, why we work so hard about putting the cryosphere in the center, not on the fringe, as it was said in the beginning. And in so many contributions and presentations of scientists from around the world, we can just reconfirm that it is worthwhile, and even if we don't know the concrete outcome, to be together and learn from each other. I've learned so many new observations, data sets, engagements, ambitions, that I go away enriched from what was discussed. And for that I would like to thank all of the contributors to the different sessions, because we have learned in all areas of the ice sheets and glaciers, the sea ice and ocean and life, the permafrost and georisk. There is new data. There is a new urgency of also always putting the human perspective of those who live and are directly affected. And while this is increasing on a global scale, it matters really for the regions and the solutions we have at hand and the actions we take. So first of all, I think a big thank you to all of the scientific input that we've had.
On top of that, personally, I consider one of the big success of this kind of meeting is to make that the community working in polar regions, which is quite well organized. We have IASC, we have SCAR, we have COMNAP, we have FARO, could have a chance to discuss with those working in the mountain regions. And to have people from Nepal, people from India, people from Ladakh, people from South America, Peru, Brazil. I mean, that's really, I would say, a game changer. Because we provide, in a way, a tribune for scientists who are not so well, I would say, listened to. And we should, I think, really build on that and think about remaking this kind of experiment on a regular basis. We heard about the need of having annual statements complementing what we have with IPCC and EPBES reports. So that's one of the take-home I have personally.
Yeah, to me the same. I would like to reinforce that, especially also the input and conclusions from the glaciers, and always insisting, like I had a good discussion with representatives of Peru, for example, but also really from all the areas, it is about water. We cannot go far without water as human beings, and to really always insist cryosphere and hydrosphere are so strongly connected, and the water cycle is affected on all levels by the future of snow, by the future of ice. If we can take that all away and in our communications insist that the cryosphere is not an extreme end of Earth, but it is part of our human existence, and we have to be inclusive in that manner, that we really bow and include those that have an everyday life in those areas. That is important for all scientists to learn that and say that.
I think we stress very strongly the need to continue monitoring. And that's absolutely vital. I mean, things are changing fast, and we cannot hear things like we heard yesterday, that a satellite mission could possibly come to an end and possibly having a hole in the observation for many years. I mean, we cannot do that. And this is one of the strong, I think, messages we will convey to heads of state. They have to take all necessary measures so that we keep securing observations around the cryosphere, associated systems, ecosystems, and so on.
And we will get support by agencies that have a position to really speak out loudly on behalf of the cryosphere. There are representatives or heads of, for example, ESA, the European Space Agency here. They will speak up about this. There is the World Meteorological Organization. There are those actors where, again, we often do not really think immediately about them carrying a lot of the scientific data and working hand in hand with us. But it is a lot of agencies and scientists who provide data that all must be made available in a fair manner. So in all scientific breakout sessions, it was insisted that the data that we produce, that they are accessible to all and they are used for the best science to fight for action.
In addition, but I think Jennifer and Jan will speak about that, there is a question of the operations and how we could as scientists working on the cryosphere, show the way of being more carbon friendly, more environmental friendly in general. And that's a big push. It's not easy. Jen Francis just earlier said how it's complicated to get a carbon neutral icebreaker, for instance. But we have to pave the road for that, and especially we have to rethink how we work with the local communities. We have to better engage with them. They have to become stronger actors of their, transmitting their knowledge, because they have incredible knowledge of their environment. They are the most concerned about what's going on, and we have to work on the way to better associate them to the science. And that would help as well to make our science more carbon friendly in a way.
And in the same regard, we discussed also the need, and again that came up in all sessions, the need for being able to use multiple languages. What does this actually mean? When we scientists talk and we show ourselves data, we are proud to be able to project into the future, but we often forget that non-scientific people need the time to go with it. We can speak about the cryosphere, and we speak about it on a matter of decades, centuries, thousands of years. But for policymakers, they want to know the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And so when we speak about collapse, when we speak about the tipping points, when we talk in our language, we sometimes do not acknowledge as scientists what fear and hopelessness we create in other people's minds. So we use some time to also, and that is the main edit of our recommendations, to think about language. And there are many languages. There's the IPCC language, there's the language of those caring about biodiversity, there is the social and economical language, there is the language of those thinking about indigenous, there is even the language of those thinking more about women than men in their contributions. So we cannot serve it all, but we can say we are fully aware that the language in which we report as scientists matters, and that we will try very much, and that's what we mean by also addressing projections of the future. We are responsible as scientists to paint the pictures of the future that has space for action and that has space for hope. So that is an important message and conclusion from all of us.
Yes, engaging communities, engaging the citizens, engaging the policymakers. It was stressed, I think, this morning by Jennifer Mercer when she got some US politicians in Greenland and just get to see what's going on. Then their mind changed. So from nothing happens to, oh, something happens. And that's a big push. And you're right, Jennifer. We have to go that way with the policymakers, with the heads of states, with the governments, but we have to rethink how we engage the citizens. It's not so easy. I mean, everything we bring as scientists on the table when we are in contact with the press is kind of desperate. And we have to bring hope. And it's not so easy because nowhere we heard about, a global solution except get greenhouse gas emission down, phase out any new extraction of fossil fuel. I mean, that's something we will stress again. But how we can convey to each individual some hope. And I don't personally have the answer, but as a scientific committee, we have really to address that with people who may have some propositions to make to us.
And in that debate, you will also see that from all three sessions on all cryosphere components, we wrote for us a very urgent role in our science. So often we hear that science is all about diagnosis, more research, more field stations, but it is time to act. So we have specifically included the recommendations that the science that we need, the data that we need, they are part of the risk assessment of our common future. What does that actually mean? Science and data and research is part of solutions in the making, because if we don't know the threats, if we don't know the costs of change and the risks on the way to the costs, then we cannot advise society at best. So you will see that for all parts of the cryosphere, we gave ourselves tasks in improving, especially the dealing with uncertainties that we have, mentioned, for example, sea level rise or sea ice forecasts, that we also address the rapid phenomena, the non-linear phenomena and the complexity that we address, especially in the realm of biodiversity protection, where there are local solutions, potentially a bit different from the greenhouse gas problem. For biodiversity, you can make it better if in the regions that we work at, if we insist on protection, reduction of all the pressures that life faces. So in all three parts, we address this need that science and scientific observation for the goals that we have, that this is part of the solution. And so please understand that those recommendations, they will be strongly put forward. We need a better protection of all components of the cryosphere.
This morning we touched upon a very sensitive topic, which is climate intervention. And I personally think it was a necessary thing to do in this forum. It's not easy. I think Valérie Masson-Delmotte had a very strong statement about, being so careful about the solar intervention, trying to get a control on the solar flux we have at the surface of the planet, because it has incredible consequences potentially. It brings questions of ethics. It brings questions of who decides, who have a voice, and so on. But still, we cannot avoid having a discussion on what can be done locally. And Sonam Wangchuk showed up a way actually at the scale of Ladakh, and that's quite unbelievable what they've been able to do there with very little means, involving the young generation, and to make that the answer for some time, partially locally, the question of handling the water resources when the glacier is vanishing. So how we as a scientific community address this topic, how we build possibly new fora for that purpose, so that we avoid this to be taken in charge by some billionaires who would have crazy ideas and would change the world. I mean, that's our responsibility as scientists to actually address that and put the right framework as any scientist would do.
I think with that, it would be nice if we had time to also show some more of the fantastic data again and alerting data. I would just like to mention for a moment that some of our recommendations and warnings in the text that is before the recommendations is very honest, and that's important for you to know as well. We are looking at feedback from cryosphere elements that are irreversible if we are not paying attention and give the best. And I would especially highlight again that the session on permafrost and georisks made very clear data available and synthesis available and images available of the threat of the carbon bombs and permafrost, but also of the threat of the erosion components of places where people live, where biodiversity is unique. And so from all of the three breakout groups, be it the sea level rise through ice mass loss, be it the threat that by sea ice loss we are destroying the communities of a wide range of life that we care for, it is not that we are glossing over these scientific observations, and I wanted to reassure you that from the input we got, that it is very serious. We will show those data, we will not gloss them away, and we thank again all the scientists that work so hard on synthesis works that we can say such things. What is important, and another word of hope though, is that we have treaties, that we have political action frameworks in which we operate. So we have called our joint synthesis the call for international stewardship, and that will be explained to the ministers as well. What we mean are their actions, their charges with that.
And with all that, just remember that we have 6 minutes with the heads of state tomorrow to summarize this in a proper manner. 6 minutes, and you may not see us tonight because I think we'll work on writing down these 6 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks again, the two of you. Yes, no, 6 minutes for them, but the NGOs will report, the civil society, the IPCC will report, and the head of states are going to speak as well on polar issues. So, merci beaucoup tous les deux.
Thank you very much to both of you.
The tandem, performing one, again, Émile and Geneviève.
Thank you very much, Olivier, and thank you very much to all who have taken part to the so-called NGO sessions. It was extremely interesting and moving to moderate them. I will share with Émile de Dieu, who has been working with me and Pascal Lamy during more than 5 years on Antarctica waters protection. I will share with him the honor and pleasure to retrace the result of our discussions. I would like to say that what we learn from the cryosphere is that climate change is already devastating large parts of our planet. Climate change is happening 4 times quicker in the Arctic. It is happening twice quicker in the Antarctic. And glaciers have already lost 30 centimeters since 1970. It does not look like a lot, but we know that it can have devastating effects in many regions of the world. First, I would like to say that the persons that have made us understand better what is at stake are persons who have taken the pain to come from their part of the world to ours. People coming from Arctic, people coming from Himalaya, people coming from Bolivia, like Maria Eugenia, or Argentina, like Vanina yesterday. I'm afraid maybe I can forget some of them, but what they have said was extremely moving because they have shown images of what is happening to their environment and what is happening to the populations. We have also understood, listening to scientists who shared with us their knowledge, we understand that cryosphere is everywhere. It's for everybody. And that the melting of ice anywhere on the planet means also sea level rise and means that the threat of disappearing for low-lying islands is already being reality. So we are faced with a tremendous challenge, and we have to act. we had also messages of hope. We know that we can do things. But the biggest one, the biggest message we had is fight climate change. And please keep the rise of temperature to 1.5, if at all still possible. Because with this limitation, part of the cryosphere will survive. We learned yesterday that 2/3 of the World Heritage glaciers would survive with 1.5, but not with 2 degrees. They would disappear. So that's the first message. But we have a lot of other messages. And now our friend Émile de Dieu will detail our 4 big messages. Accelerate implementation of agreed commitments, including the Paris Agreement. Second, strengthen commitment to protect and conserve the cryosphere. Third, remain accountable to civil society, because as Pascal said, we need science, but we need also awareness, and we need action, and not only from governance, but also for all sorts of actors. So remain accountable to civil society, and finally, engage meaningfully with indigenous people, because they bring their experience, but they bring their knowledge, and we need to act first of all for them. So after the detailed presentation by Émile, Maria Eugenia, you will have the possibility to speak again to us. Thank you, Émile.
Thank you, Geneviève. I don't feel any pressure, joking, after such speakers, especially after Antje and Jérôme, but also after you, Geneviève. I think I can be very brief in presenting the points, but I would like to start before speaking about the content. It's that I heard today and yesterday my name quite a few times, but I haven't heard the names of tens and hundreds of other people who worked on this, on preparing this summit, have worked before for many years and will continue to work for a ton of ages. I mean, I don't want to offend anyone, but making a long list, but Natalie and Martin, I think they deserve a special shout out for the massive investment in preparing this. And this is a bit of an improvisation, but I remember the words of the former president of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, who used to say, we know what needs to be done. We don't know how to win elections after we've done that. So probably this part of these 2 days, it's the civil society and the scientists as citizens explaining to the decision makers, to the leaders, that this is what we want them to do. And if they don't do that, then they will lose elections. If they don't protect the climate, if they don't protect the glaciers, the polar regions, this is when they will lose power, influence, and whatever is dear to them. So to go quickly, because I understand that we need to make some time. For the implementation of agreed commitments, the priority number 1 would be to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. We must stay under 1.5 degrees. Another key priority is to effectively implement the global agreements which have been already done, such as the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and its 30 by 30 target, and of course the High Seas Treaty. As far as the polar regions are concerned, the civil societies, we do urge decision makers to uphold the conservation goals of the Antarctic Treaty System and to strengthen the Polar Code and its enforcement, but also to allocate substantial funding for polar research. And I think the scientists here can agree that it's never enough to have it's never sufficient money for the research. The commitment, decision makers must continue to advocate at the highest level for a representative network of marine and terrestrial protected areas in the polar and high mountain regions. We also call on the leaders to establish a global moratorium on deep sea mining within the International Seabed Authority and to extend indefinitely the moratorium on the commercial fishing in the Central Arctic Ocean. And generally, the fragility of the cryospheric regions requires stringent protection. So that's why decision makers must implement stricter regulations for fishing, and tourism. And the third big part, what Genevieve was so eloquently emphasizing, it's the fact that the decision makers have to be responsible and accountable to the civil society. That's why we need to ensure that the scientific advice is the one that informs policy decisions. And we do hope to establish a transparent monitoring mechanism for commitment implementation, which will be, of course, used for the upcoming international events such as the UNFCCC's COPs, or the next UN Ocean Conference, which will happen in Nice, of course, in 25. Genevieve, over to you.
Thank you, Emile. So a very last word to say that we, as NGO, civil society, we insisted a lot to have a more representative of the indigenous peoples. And the organizers were successful enough to bring there people from Himalaya, from Greenland, and from Latin America, the Andean countries. This implication is absolutely key for the future. It is in line with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and it is a duty to give them a stronger role. Yesterday, Maria Eugenia told us that glaciers is water, and water is, as she put it, the blood of the planet. And it's the blood of the planet, but it's also the blood of human beings living in this planet. And it's not only a question of life, it's also a question of spirituality. She was very inspiring and very moving, and that's why she's coming back to speak to us today. So as she speaks in Spanish, she needs an interpreter. So Maria Eugenia.
Si vous faites la traduction, en français, en anglais, en français? Oui. D'accord. C'est 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes, pas plus. 2-3 minutes. Ouais, soyez bien, voilà.
Muy buenos días. Hablar una experiencia por más de 20 años en pocos minutos es muy difícil, pero voy a intentar. La Red de Mujeres Indígenas sobre Biodiversidad es una red a nivel internacional que venimos trabajando por más de 20 años. No solamente es una red de mujeres indígenas a nivel de la región de América Latina y el Caribe, sino es una red a nivel del mundo. Tenemos la representación de hermanas de África, de Asia, de América del Norte, prácticamente los 7 continentes, de acuerdo a la división de Naciones Unidas. Entonces voy a iniciar con estas palabras, voy a tratarlo de hacer, embajador, en 2-3 minutes. Es imposible, pero voy a intentar.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Good morning, everyone. Summarizing 23 years in 2 minutes is going to be quite difficult. I am from the Indigenous Women on Biodiversity Network. This is a network of women from Latin America and the Caribbean. But this network is also a global one because we also represent Africa, Asia, North America, basically the 7 continents. So I will try to speak for 2 to 3 minutes.
Sobre el valor del potencial de conocimientos tradicionales, porque para nosotros los conocimientos tradicionales vienen de nuestros ancestros, que hemos ido practicando de generación en generación a pesar de todas las dificultades que presentan. Sin embargo, pienso que, y nosotros apostamos de que frente al cambio climático, frente a la crisis climática, frente al deshielo de los cerros, las montañas, la pérdida del agua, tiene que ver también con aquello que es los conocimientos tradicionales. Los pueblos indígenas, las mujeres indígenas, somos la alternativa para la recuperación de estos conocimientos tradicionales.
Je voudrais
So I would like about the value of knowledge and traditional expertise. We are faced with many challenges today: climate change, glaciers melting, the loss of water, and so we have to use the knowledge and the know-how of traditional communities, the know-how that has been given to us by our ancestors generations after generations.
Porque nuestra organización de hace 22 años prácticamente viene trabajando fundamentalmente en los conocimientos tradicionales. Nuestras estrategias, las alianzas que hacemos con todos los países con representación de pueblos indígenas, lo que hacemos es trabajar en el fortalecimiento, la recuperación de los conocimientos tradicionales. Nuestras áreas de trabajo son formación, liderazgo, recuperación de los conocimientos tradicionales a través de la historia oral, a través de preguntarnos quiénes somos y qué queremos. Tenemos las experiencias nacionales, pues traemos experiencias desde nuestras comunidades, desde nuestros lugares de nacimiento para recuperar y ir preguntando a nuestros mayores cómo es frente a lo que esta crisis climática, frente al deshielo de las montañas, qué se hace. Estas experiencias nacionales, locales, nos ha permitido, en cierta forma, fortalecer nuestros conocimientos tradicionales.
donc nous avons
So we worked to build that network. This organization has been around for 22 years, and we based our work on traditional know-how and knowledge. We have allies everywhere around the globe. We work with other indigenous people as well to share traditional knowledge. We work together, and we also have trainings to promote leadership and to share that knowledge. We also work with national and regional experiences, and it is important to us. It is key for us to be able to share what we do at the local level.
Conocimientos indígenas, ¿por qué la titularidad? Nosotros somos los dueños del territorio. Nosotros tenemos los conocimientos tradicionales y somos la alternativa para lo que es la crisis climática. Por lo tanto, como titulares de nuestro conocimiento, conocedores de nuestra realidad, conocedores de nuestro territorio, entonces, pues los conocimientos indígenas para nosotros son los pilares, la casa, donde se debe edificar lo que es las alternativas para el cambio climático.
Donc pour nous, le plus
What is crucial to us is to work on the ownership of this knowledge. What I mean by that is that we are the owners of that knowledge, of this know-how. This is clearly our pillars.
Pues semillas de la vida es el punto de construcción de sistemas no solamente sociales, sino políticos, espirituales y culturales. Muchas gracias.
donc pour nous, le plus important.
What matters to us is to be able to continue sharing that knowledge and that spirituality. Thank you very much for your attention.
Les opérateurs, je crois que c'est Jennifer.
Now we are going to hear from Jennifer Mercer, I believe, and from Ian Robert Couder as well.
Everything has been said in terms of science. I mean, we had a very good speech by Antje and Jérôme reminding us.
Is it this one not working?
I think this one's working. Okay. Reminding us about all the things we should be telling to our head of states, even though in 6 minutes it's going to be a bit difficult, but we trust you to do your best. So it's good for us because we can focus on the base ground thing, which matters for deploying science in the polar regions. We've had a brief session this morning, but that was, I hope, enough to convey a few key elements that we would like to bring up to the head of states equally. Basically, one number that you have to know for those who were not in the session this morning is that for every scientist we deploy in the field, there are 9 operators working behind on average. So that gives you an idea of how much effort and energy is put to actually being able to conduct science. And on this, we have, as polar operator, a massive role to play to make sure that the people not only can do high-tech science, but can simply go to these places and go to these places regularly every year or every month or every week, depending on the type of work that they need to deploy. So we have several fundamental principles that we will briefly state to remind why we are committed to deploying science. The first of it is that we are really focusing first on safety. We want to deploy people in safety conditions, and that's why organizations like COMNAP and FARO, COMNAP being the Council of Operational Manager in Antarctica, and FARO being
The Forum of Arctic Research Operators.
I feel it's better when she says it than me. That's why, the first thing we put as key element is we want people to be safe in the field. The second principle is the leadership through example. We have heard about it a bit before. We want to work in a way that don't impact the environment. What's the point of deploying science to measure the state of the environment if ourselves we are not leading the example by showing best practice in terms of respect of the environment? Another one which is important and that goes with the previous one is investment into technological innovation. Technological innovation is what is going to help us be leaders in the decarbonation, for instance, of stations, or in finding new ways of going there without impacting too much the environment. But it's also what's going to help us deploy science in a more sustainable way, maybe, by automatizing some data collection, or helping also us access places that are difficult to access with limited impact. So innovation is an important asset for us. And finally, and foremost maybe, it's the international collaboration. Because the fact that we are all here, several countries, several types of organizations, remind us that we don't do that alone. We don't do that NGOs versus researchers or operators versus whatever. We are just here to all do our work together, and we are all here to try to help each other achieving the best of it. And for this, we are going through a recommendation, and Jennifer,
Yes.
It's your floor.
Thank you, Jan. I'm relying on Jan's phone for the notes, but we have some recommendations, and these are based on the premise that polar data acquisition is only possible through the nexus of scientists and operators that rely on practical, technical, and non-political expertise through regional, national, and international support networks. The recommendations that are coming out of the polar operations discussions include actively promoting the continuing collaborative work of the countries to undertake the science and science support that is going to fill the knowledge gaps that we have. Increasing investments into the modernization of our polar stations and infrastructure. Investments in, wasn't sure what that was. Investments in the short term will actually have long-term payback. I think we've talked about financial investments in a few of the different sessions. Increasing our investments in people. So these are both scientists and operators. Increasing investments in infrastructure and assets, as I just said, that will enable the implementation of the critical science that is required. And in this respect, or in this regard, that means increasing stable and permanent professional positions for early career people. Moving on here, another recommendation is to continue promoting the shared use of stations, infrastructure, activities, and vessels to help limit the buildup or artificialization of the polar regions. And then we also recommend to recommit to the intrinsic and wilderness values of the polar regions by prioritizing environmental protection values.
And with this, we've done.
I'm discussing the budget of the Institut Polaire Français with the French presidency now on phone. Now another tandem, Lilou and Ashok. They're going to speak about three things, explorers for you, Lilou, and Ashok. He tried to explain me that bicycle is a good way of circulating in Paris, which unfortunately for you was not good last week, no?
I thought I was in New Delhi.
Okay. And you are going to speak about you will start with the foundation and also with the Oceans Rise and Resilience Coalition. You got, yeah?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. 2 minutes. Yes, I'll take 2 minutes with your permission. 1 minute for each of the two sequences. No, 1 minute for each. The first one was on the foundation. So we inherited, for those who were moderating, a round table, which was not really round, which was a straight table of 9 foundations, I think, fantastic foundations, but it was catastrophic. It went on very badly. And this morning, the Ocean Rise and Resilience was a disaster. But I'll explain why. Basically, no, it's a joke. Basically, yesterday the foundations proved in the, I would say, the mindset that Pascal Lamy has oriented all these debates, that action is possible when you have a methodology which brings a hybrid format, multi-actors, multi-sectors, and the foundations dealing with the polar issues and the glaciers proved it. So we went from, to quote Pascal, from knowledge, la connaissance, to awareness, la conscience, and then proved that these 9 foundations, and I'll give the names of a few of them, have contributed some for many years, like TARAF, this, how many years? 20 years? 25 years? 20 years. They celebrated this last week. Have proved that by a specific methodology, which includes, of course, finance, and without finance, there's no action. For the last quatuor of Pascal Lamy's instructions or guidelines, awareness, knowledge, awareness, policies, and action, it's possible. So the situation, yes, is, to come back, is catastrophic, of course. Melting not only of the permafrost, but melting also of public funding on the topic. Yes, on the topic. So these foundations prove that they are not only part of the ecosystem, but maybe are at the heart of the ecosystem because they work with hybrid financing. They work with a network of public and private institutions and individuals, and they work at the heart of each of them. There was one denominator commun, although not many scientists were present on the, in the room. There was one on the floor speaking. It was Carlo from Ice Memory. I think, Carlo, I don't know if you're here. You are here. I hope you were happy about yesterday's interaction, and we had time that was also good to discuss with the audience, with many other actors. One information which was very important, and everybody knows about it, but Frédéric Paulsen and with Jérôme Chartier, who were there, gave us the privilege and the honor to launch the foundation within the forum, within the One Planet Polar Summit, and within this discussion yesterday. So it gave, actually, it was not a disaster, it gave a lot of hope. And also we concluded that there was no competition between these foundations, because basically all of them are raising funds. It's not only giving, but it's also raising awareness and raising funds for the reasons we know. But actually, The 10 million announced by Frederick Paulsen yesterday can be transformed into four times more by raising funds, and that is only more money for more action with a lot of science. So that's the 1 minute for yesterday's foundation meeting. And so the disaster of this morning was the Ocean Rise and Resilience Coalition. So we started, the disaster is because there's this tsunami of problems coming and which are there. It's no more just a fiction, it's a reality, it's a scientific reality. It has been demonstrated. There are a lot of metrics, a lot of figures, there are dates, we have specific dates, 2050, 1 billion people affected, 2100, we have a list of 100 cities who are going to not be synced, but who won't be working, like Shanghai, for instance, or London. So time is now, as the mayor of New Orleans said in her video. We basically brought together this coalition of cities which exist. Cities, I don't know if Romain Troublé is here with the platform Océan and Climat. They have been working since 3 years to bring public and private partners and cities. With Olivier in Brest, we brought more international governors and mayors. And the aim was this morning to launch the vision of the President Macron, his special envoy, and Christian Estrosi, who has been mandated by the President to carry the baton till Nice in June 2025, where we hope to have 1 billion people represented by, let's say, 1,000 cities and coastal regions, defending, promoting, alerting, and especially raising awareness and raising funds, public and private, to address these issues. We had with us on the floor the private sector, we had businesses, we had insurances, we had, of course, scientists. We went through the 4 recommendations of the OCP platform and cities. Please have a look at the website. It's very well done, and this morning was very clearly presented. And this was concluded, I think, in the best way possible. High support from the government of France, of course, in the presence and the speech of Christophe Béchu, the Minister for Ecological Transition. And the gift, maybe to come back to New Delhi, was from India, because we had a very strong presence of the Minister for Earth and Sciences, only, who has in his portfolio ocean, poles, and science, which is all what we've been addressing since 2 days here. And he engaged and committed to manage, that's what he said, he'll manage the commitment of 9 coastal cities, 9 coastal states of India, the south, which is 7,500 kilometers, 500 million people. So actually we're already half through of our objective in one sequence. And this is the end of my minute, because our objective is to, again, represent 1 billion people in the UN Ocean Conference in Nice, which would be the landing point with deliverables on this topic of cities, regions, and also islands facing sea level rise and resilient to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashok. I'll have 4 minutes. I'll try to be brief, and I'll try to first and foremost thank the explorers that blessed us with their presence and shared their testimonies with us these past few days. Because we had the chance to gather a dozen of testimonies in 1.5 days from polar and glacial explorers from all over the world, some of them here in Paris, some of them online. And where they're aware of experiences from both poles and the most remote glaciers of the world, we had one message that remained the same. It's a privilege to explore these regions and the cryosphere, and this privilege comes with a responsibility, that of education and transmission. The explorers, they bring back from their expeditions beautiful images, they bring back films, testimonies that have the chance to touch us who've not been blessed to travel to these unique places. And they repeatedly show us how pristine and fragile the poles and the glaciers are. They warn us towards the banalization of visiting these places that are unwelcoming to man. And yesterday, Daphne Victor, the daughter of Paul-Émile Victor, shared her father's words with us. Man is the only species that does not have a survival instinct. And that moment, she asked the policymakers to prove him wrong. The explorers' recommendations are quite simple, actually. To do as much as we can, as fast as possible. To not be scared to be bold in policymaking and keep following scientists' recommendations, who they often travel with. To improve the integration of local and indigenous knowledge, because they're the first witnesses to these changes, and not separate their knowledge from what we call science. Their message is clear. We've been saying how urgent the situation is for over 30 years now. Now it's time to act.
Bravo. Nice deal.
So,